welcome to the inaugural episode of The Block. I hope you can hear me. The mic is hot and live. I'm here with my man, Darnell. This is just an opportunity. We always are on the phone and we're always texting back and forth. So we said, why don't we bring this texting and this phone talk to just our little live space? And so that's what we're doing right here. We just call us on The Block because, these kind of conversations, you just stand on the corner and you just like, are talking and arguing, knowing you got to get down the street, get to where you need to go. It was supposed to only be a 5-minute transition, but it ended up being 2 hours. You get home and people asking you where you been. That's the kind of conversations we sometimes have. If I'm driving to work or he's getting out or whatever, we thought we'd just do it here. So how you doing, man?
I'm doing great as always. It's another Saturday morning. We got football now. We had football last week as well, but we got some more college football. Got some big matchups coming. We got Ohio State and Oregon. We got Michigan, Washington. So I don't know. Well, Michigan, Washington. It's a big game in name, but let's see if it's a big game in game actually.
Yeah, that's right. You're gonna figure out who the contenders, who the pretenders. Who just had a hiccup and they regrouped. All that's gonna be determined this week and next week. Gonna start. As as they always say, you are who your record says you are. At some point, you are that team. And I'm watching all this stuff about LSU after what they did last week, last year, then last week, and talking about how they're playing and the lack of intensity on defense. There's a lot of folks, it feels like, we had the pandemic, but folks are back to their same old ways here in the college football landscape. So you hit it right on the head. We got some games where we might learn something, but is it what we need to do? And we were remiss to say, if we were to begin this podcast without recognizing, you know, um, 9/11, and which is also being recognized. I think about where I was, at that time, and I remember just parking at. I worked at Beloit College, and I was parking at a sports center when the news came across and phone calls coming in and everything, and it was just it shook up folks so much, and the way in which people sacrificed to try to save other folks' lives, in a tragedy. It was just something that you can't really forget. So you'll be seeing that across everybody's airways. It'll be a major part of the college sports and pro sports landscape. As we are remembering the losses that happened on that tragic day, and really changed the way in which we operate as a country and as a world moving forward. In terms of that. So yeah, we're remiss to do that, but that's going to be part of when you watching college sports today. You can't watch it without seeing images and reflections on what happened on that day. All right, if you want to kind of check us out and catch us out here in these streets, you can always catch us on at realsportsguys.com. That's where we have a lot of different opportunities, and we have a lot of content. We just had a great interview with up and coming artist Nell, who is also a student athlete. Dropped the album, The Golden Mind, the Golden Child Mindset. You got to go see that great interview. We put her in the booth with my man Marcus the Game Changer, and he is the co-host of Hustle and Flows here on the RSG media network here, and so he's been doing his thing. But it was a great conversation between, really a the old head MC hip hop student athlete and the new. It was a great opportunity, great stuff. So check that out. We got a boxing moment out there with myself and Darnell. So there's some content out there. So go to realsportsguys.com to check that out. And we'll also have our social media up here throughout our conversation, so you can catch us in other places as well. So Darnell, we got Michigan, Washington. Michigan played against Western Michigan. I would say they beat them like they're supposed to beat them. So, whereas in the past, those games would have been closer than they needed to be. So that's one thing, but that doesn't really tell us a lot. And then Washington had the historic loss, but we've seen teams have those hiccups because these are 18 to 21-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
And right themselves, right? And it's almost like you forgot they had their historic loss by the time you get to game 9. You're like, did they really lose to Montana? So because we're dealing with 18 to 21-year-olds, you know this. You're trying to coach high school kids. We're from day to day. They struggle, and then all of a sudden they surprise you. What are you looking for in that game, man? When we sit back, what are you looking for in that game?
I'm looking to see if Michigan is for real or not. I mean, we
Yeah,
saw this last year when they had the great week 1 against Minnesota, and then next week they lose to Michigan State. I mean, but yeah, I really want to see if Michigan's for real or not, because we've been hearing a lot about. There's been a lot of changes. We know there's been a lot of changes to the coaching staff, um, and I hope the team is better and improved because me personally, I don't want to see Josh Gaddis lose his job before he can really do what he's trying to do at Michigan. Because if you look at his style of play and the way he runs things, he needs a certain set of personnel in there. And when he first got there, he had the Nico Collins of the world, DPJs. They're not the type of receivers that he usually runs with. But now you see, now they got, well, Ronnie Bell's out now. But, you got the speed and space type of athletes on the field. You got guys like Roman Wilson, guys like Blake Corum. You got guys like Donovan Edwards out there, just like different like athletes, like
mm-hmm.
that kind of speed on the field that you can just put in space. And they still have a big offensive line, but that's something that you saw at Alabama too. You had the mix of, you had the clash of styles. The war of worlds. You have the big O line like the Mauling type, and then the receivers and the backs. They're the quick guys that can make you miss in space. So I really want to see how that is coming with Michigan's offense, especially against this Washington defense. Which, if you look at Washington's offense, they play offense like they don't want to be on offense. If you watch them on offense, they look like. You ever seen somebody with somebody holding a baby that they just uncomfortable? They never hold a baby before, and that's how they holding the football. They don't want the ball in their head. Washington would much rather be on defense when they're playing football, and that would be a test to see how Michigan's offense handles Washington's defense.
I love that. They play offense like they don't want to be on offense. And you and I, we've gone back and forth, so much has been put on Coach Harbaugh in the office. And one of the things I said when he first got there, he gonna start winning when he gets a quarterback that reflects his personality and energy. Um, and it's been a battle to try to find that right person. Um, and so we'll see if they have that, right now. But the part that got lost in me, and you and I always talked about this because it was fool's gold, was their defensive philosophy. And for a long time, there's sometimes when you are seen as the top of your field, you sometimes can buy into the Kool-Aid and decide that it is your system that wins. You forget that players make systems as well. And you got to find a compromise between what you want to do and what you have. And I always felt like Michigan was trying to fit, especially on the back end of their defense, players who weren't ready to play in that type of system into a system versus saying, this is what you got on the field. And these are great players who can execute. And we're going to probably put y'all, whatever we're going to do, we're going to put you in the best position to win. And I feel like they have a defensive staff that appears to be the kind of people who do that. Like, this is what we got. And if we can get them to play this way, what they can do, we can be very competitive. And where it shows up is when you play a Western Michigan that you probably should be beat by 3 or 4 touchdowns, you win by 14. It look a little tighter than it should be. You give up a deep ball because you got you decide you want to play zero coverage with somebody who really can't play in space, but who could play cover two, who could play a little bit of different. Like they could be high level if you played a certain way, right? And I feel like he's improved. This is the part that you and I want to see if it execute, because you know this when you look at Ohio State. We always said this. Alabama was, we always put the attention on the head coaches, but what makes these programs elite is that they got great teachers in the position. And so
Right.
I think when you see what Hart is going to be doing with these running backs, is no, the running backs are going to be good because they got somebody. You go back and see what he did at Indiana, who knows how to build running backs. Same thing like what's your boy Hartline or whatever his name is. Hartside, what's his name over there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Ohio
You
State.
know who it is, Brian Hartline. No.
I don't want to say his name like that. I try to say what I say. I don't want to put too much shade over there. Even though I got a lot of colleagues over there, I got a lot of love for. And when we talking about helping young people, we all on the same team. When we talking about this football thing, some other stuff come up. But the thing but what I do is I speak truth. He knows there's a standard. He knows the way they got to play, and he gonna teach them to play that way, right? And that's why they
Right.
receive. Not that they don't. Then you're able to keep recruiting great receivers, right? But they know, because they know you're gonna develop them.
Right.
They ain't had that kind of system in easily 15 years, and that's the difference. It's not just being a recruit 5-star athletes. It's recruiting 5-star athletes and developing them, and that's the part that I'm feeling like. And we talk about patience. A lot of times they were talking about this on a couple of shows here, that these ADs are sometimes under pressure, but Ward Manuel's ability to transition to this new contract in a way, I think he sees that, right? And whether or not, Jim, how long he wants to keep doing it, but getting through that first contract transition, altering it, getting to some of these coaches, I think is going to be interesting. And what it means is, doesn't mean you beat Ohio State. It may not mean you beat Ohio State this year, but it means you got to beat Michigan State. You got to be pissed. Like, you got to win those other games. And
Right.
we're not only losing to Ohio State, but then you are losing these other games. And it might mean you win your bowl game, right? If the only loss or two is against Ohio State, but you win the bowl game, then that's a different narrative. But when you lose to Ohio State and Michigan State and
Yeah.
Washington, right? Now you got a narrative that we can't work with, right? We
Right.
can't. So that's what I'm interested in seeing in this game, man. I know that was long, but you and I, these are things you and I unpack when we
Yeah.
when we drive and talk and text, right?
I don't think Penn State. I don't think Penn State is necessarily a must-win. They got to be. They got to be competitive against Penn State, Wisconsin, Iowa, those kind of games. But I don't think they're necessarily all of them must-win. They could lose one of those games and still look good. But the game they can't lose is Michigan State, and they can't lose to Washington, especially and with Washington coming off the loss to Montana. You can't lose that game. This is a must-win
Yeah, yeah. At the crib too.
at
Yeah.
home.
And those big games, if they in Ann Arbor, you can't lose them. Right? If you lose them and you lose it on the road against a tough Penn State, that's a different kind of game.
Yeah,
You can't lose to Michigan State at home or on the road.
right.
But and Wisconsin and Madison is going to be a tough game, but you got to find a way to squeak that out. Ohio State, you got to find out where your dog's at right now. Now, that game has got to be down to that game got to come down to field goal. That
Right.
game's got to come down to
It's not.
garbage time. Now, I know you started to show your bias right now, but that's where that got to come. Like,
No, I'm being real with you. If I thought it was a field goal game, I'd tell you it was going to be a field goal game. Remember the year Dwayne Haskins was on Ohio State? I told you Michigan was going to win that game, and they came out there and laid an egg. I'll be objective with you.
I know what I'm saying what it has to happen. Is it gonna happen? But I'm
No,
saying that, but I'm saying if you're looking at progress, that game is a nail biter,
yeah,
right? It's not a 2-touchdown loss, right? So if you do all those other things and it's a nail biter, that's different. So that's what
I
we're gonna.
think I think Michigan is in a similar position against Ohio State that Miami was to Alabama. Miami in that game, they didn't necessarily have to win that game, but that was a recruiting game. That game is a game where they had to show competitiveness. They had to be
Yeah,
in the game to where you can sell that to the recruits that we're building something. We're not there yet, but if we had you, you know what I'm saying, we will be just another step closer. But if they get ran off the field like Miami did, it's not going to be a good look.
Yeah, and it's similar to what Florida State did to Notre Dame.
Right.
That competitive that gave them former players for Florida State a sign that, oh, we back. We competing. Like it came that, like, that type of effort, because early on it was crazy, but they battled back, right? And it's that kind of thing that uh you've got to be you've got to be watching and make sure that that happens. What other game is out here that's looming for you? I know you mentioned a couple of them. What's another game out here that you like?
Well, I'm gonna bring up the list. I know right offhand you got Ohio State and Oregon. That
Now,
game
talk
preseason,
about Ohio State, Oregon.
that was gonna be
What do you think will happen there?
preseason.
Huh?
Preseason, this was gonna be one of the bigger out of conference games in the for the year. But Oregon in their in the last week, you don't know if they were holding stuff back because they're trying to, keep the playbook kind of vanilla. You know how like NFL
Yeah.
teams do in the preseason game. You don't know if they're doing that sort of deal against Fresno State or not. But Kayvon Thibodeau, he got banged up in that game. He rolled his ankle. He's gonna play. He's probably gonna give it a go, but he's not gonna be 100%, and that's gonna be a big problem because that was the X factor. If you have a freshman quarterback that hasn't played yet, in C.J. Stroud, how is he going to deal with the number one, the future number one player, the number one pick in the draft, Kayvon Thibodeau, rushing the passer?
Mm-hmm.
And if he's not all the way there, maybe maybe they have that much more time to throw the ball to the receivers. And if you know the Oregon defense, their weaknesses are secondary. And the strength of Ohio State obviously is the receiving core. They have the best receiving core in the country. So if they can't get the pressure that they need to get, it's going to be a long night or a short night. It depends. They don't got running clock in college, but it might be that kind of game. But Oregon, they just gotta hopefully get that pass rush going, and hopefully Kayvon Thibodeau, they get him some ibuprofen or something, so he'll be ready for the game.
Yeah, and the one thing I think you've talked a lot about even here, that Oregon has become much more of a physical team,
Right.
and has put together some really solid, NFL draft prospects as a result of that. I mean, they're recruiting, in terms of some of the people they've been able to get on the defensive side of the ball. You always think about Oregon and just their offensive explosiveness going back to Chip Kelly and beyond, about that. But, sometimes they got in those big games when, they're playing against an SEC team or something like that, that physical play. But they up front, they are, they got that physical match. They might not be right now ready for Ohio State, but we'll see in it. But it's one of those intriguing things. It's one of those things where it gives you a sense of what direction are we going in. And like you said, those recruiting games, right? This is and this is part of what I was saying about you and I. We're having, we see all this, realignment, everybody reacting to the SEC. The other strategy is just play good out of conference games. So these matchups in the in the Pac-12, in the Big Ten, and other playing these kind of marquee matchups up front can create narrative as well. You don't always have to add teams. What you do is, be really strategic throughout your conference with those out of conference games and in ways in which you're playing. You might not start out playing, Alabama or uh, even Georgia, but maybe you play in Mississippi State, and then you add in something else. But you're getting some of that competitive juices. You changing the narrative, and that's one of these type of games for a team like Oregon, is that they are being very strategic about these matchups with, like, Ohio State, and it's good for Ohio State, right? In a way that you kind of create narrative and brand. So that's one of these good games where you don't have to do realignment. You just have to be very savvy about your scheduling. Michigan against Washington. Without the loss last week, that's an intriguing game.
Yeah.
Right? You take the Montana loss out of there, that builds your schedule in a different way,
Right.
Washington. So
It's kind of like the ACC Big Ten Challenge in
yeah,
basketball. They
yes.
build something like that in football as well. With Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin. Not
Yes.
Michigan, Wisconsin. Michigan, Wisconsin. I meant Michigan versus Washington. They
Mhm.
could throw Wisconsin, USC down the line, something like that. Or
Yes.
shoot, the way they playing UCLA in Wisconsin, that would be a slugfest.
That'd be a slugfest, contrast of styles. You know what I'm saying?
No, yeah, no, that yeah. UCLA trying to bring a little more of that Wisconsin into
Aren't
it.
they? My goodness. We talked about that on the other show. I'm like, is this the UCLA? Is this the Chip
Yeah.
Kelly I know? It's like, oh, you trying to go downhill and get physical.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You using one of them, another one of them Michigan transfers who's somewhere blowing up. Trying to it's just like, my goodness. We just we like I was like, Michigan is like the how the Milwaukee Brewers used to be. Milwaukee Brewers used to bring up all this talent only to really feed it to the Yankees and everybody else. Because they couldn't hold on to them. And so, but you look around, all these players are performing somewhere else, other than our former quarterback down in Tennessee. Like, he struggled a little bit, but and you see the same thing with Wisconsin's former quarterback down in Notre Dame. What do you make of Notre Dame?
Notre Dame, I gotta see. I gotta wait and see. I don't know because I don't know what Florida State is yet. I mean, is Florida State
Right.
really back, or did Notre Dame take a step back? I mean, it's that's a wait and see kind of
Mm.
deal with Notre Dame.
A recent thing came up here, brother. That was, and you and I didn't even get a chance to talk about this because it just got announced here with BYU and Cincinnati.
Oh,
Coming
with the Big 12, right?
the Big 12. And I actually thought that's a good move. I think Cincinnati
I do too.
always been a program that's been kind of upcoming. Even back to some of my former teammates from high school went down and played at Cincinnati, watching that program grow way back in the day. It's always been an underrated program in terms of what it can do. BYU brings a whole different type of energy, I think, to it. The physical team, they've been on some national stages. They got really good recruiting lines as well.
Yeah.
It's a great way of repackaging.
Well, we got Houston in there too. Houston as
Got
well.
got Houston in there who's up and coming, and Houston.
Football and basketball.
That's the side I was going to get to you. The
Right.
basketball side of this could be right. The basketball side of this is like, wow, okay, this basketball side could be, people don't
Mm-hmm.
understand. And even in sports like because of my partner, the volleyball side, like, there's some other sporting aspects of this deal
Yeah.
that is going to really bolster that conference. But the part that wasn't getting love was the basketball side. It's going
Right.
That's going to be something else over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they might be built. They built some on the basketball side too. You got Cincinnati. You got
Yeah.
Houston. Houston, like they're not a team everybody be talking about, but they're always in the top at the end of the year. Like they always around the Elite Eight. You know what I'm saying? Sweet 16, Elite 8.
Mm-hmm.
They make those big runs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the thing about Houston, man, I want to dig in on that, man. Houston, because you follow all the recruiting stuff, and
Yeah.
and the thing and on the basketball and the way that the population trends have been changing, where people have been moving, where talent have been going. It's one of the reasons why some of these northern cities that have been dominating basketball, like northern states like Michigan and Chicago, and we talked about this in our other shows. Just families are moving south into some of these places and relocating. Houston, in my mind, always felt like could be like what the U did in Miami. If you draw a circle around that area and talent, and when you think about the number of people who live in that region,
Yeah, you add Dallas to it too.
and
Ooh.
you sneak up to Dallas, right? And you're not too far from Louisiana, you can sneak across, right? Like, Houston is sneaky good. And a lot, with the coaching and the right setup, you know, you as a young person, Houston not a bad city to go live in. It's like it can have that Atlanta feel to it in terms of the professionals and the type and how they look in that city. What if I know you look at this stuff like, am I right about that in terms of the
Yeah, they got tons of athletes
those,
down there.
yeah.
Because I was watching Mike Schmitz, he does the NBA
Mm-hmm.
the NBA draft stuff. So he
Yeah,
does
I
the
sat
film.
next to him at
He has the film room.
yep.
He does the film room. So he did his film room with Davion Mitchell.
Yep.
Everybody knows Davion Mitchell played at Baylor. One of the defensive player of the year, top 10 draft pick, and he was talking about in high school he played with Richard LeCounte. If you guys don't know what Richard LeCounte is, he played safety at Georgia. He got drafted this year, and he's on the Cleveland Browns right now. He plays safety. So what he said was he wasn't the best defensive player on his team. He said Richard LeCounte, he took all the tough matchups. He was the lockdown defender on their team. And I was
Mm.
like, man, that's something, because Texas definitely got some crazy athletes.
Yeah, and a lot of these kids are playing two sports, like you just said. They play multiple sports. You know, at the point they got to choose which one they're gonna go to, right? And so
Yeah,
when you're a place like Houston, like even there are 3-star athletes, right, who got potential, right, that you can grow. So you can almost take that mix of, you know, uh, you know, the top programs that are trying to get those 4 and 5s in that Wisconsin model of I can turn a 3 into a 5. I I could turn somebody into a TJ Watt. I could turn somebody into, you know what I'm saying? Because we got player development at the same,
right.
but they could get that mix going and really draw. They could draw. So when you add that mix, now they got that little brand of the Big 12. It's going to be interesting the way that they ever leverage that in recruitment. And that becomes sneaky good. So it's not about, and what's great about this, and this is where patience is really important. This is what I always call it the Le'Veon Bell strategy. This is where you got to learn to be a patient runner, young running backs. You got to let the
Yeah,
play develop. I mean, I love the Hard Knocks when Zeke was talking to the young cat about how to run. Then he said, watch this. And he went in and showed him how you had to be
yeah.
patient, box it up, right? And I think you can never chase people. Don't chase the SEC. You got to aim towards where you think the future is, right? And in a getting a place like Houston that has that, where you can really put your arms around that and do it, can really be beneficial, man. So I'm excited about that, all the way. I'm up here seeing that they talking about Iowa State, man. Iowa State football program has been on the verge, right? And see, that's another
I
big.
think they on upset alert.
You say
I
you
think
said
they on upset alert.
okay. Talk to me.
Man, I think Iowa's gonna bring it to them. This has been the hurdle that Matt Campbell's always had. They've been they always a team that sneaks up on the other teams in the Big 12, but when they play Iowa, it's always a little bit of a different story. And Kirk Ferentz, he showed he got a squad with them this year. They beat on Indiana something serious, and Indiana was one of the teams I was saying they're gonna be nice this year, especially with Michael Penix coming back for another year. We saw the type of season he had last year. I know he's coming off an injury, but he's not just like a guy that runs around. He can really spin it. He can really spin it. So like the way they shut that offense down with the 2 pick sixes. I mean, there was a. I think Iowa's going bring something.
So this is what you're doing. This is why you unpacking the secret to Kirk Ferentz, 8-4 Ferentz. See, he'll win this game, probably just like you just said, and then he'll lose 2 others he ain't supposed to win,
He
right?
gonna lose to Illinois and
And then
oh,
they're gonna be talking about him like he's gonna be a great coach for the NFL, right? And I ain't knocking him, but when they be talking about Ferentz is the modern day Bo Schembechler. And I love that. I grew up in Ann Arbor, but Bo lost a lot of Rose Bowls. And we hear the team, the team, the team. And I got to just be real about it. But he lost a lot of big games. Kirk Ferentz is at next level down. I mean, how many times has he been 8-4? But what happens is he get a game like this, or he'll win because it's so tough to win in Iowa City. He'll upset Ohio State in Iowa City, and then it carries on. Like this is his mystique game. This is the one that's going to carry on and allow for Cass to sit on the ESPN desk talk about how great a coach he is. But they ain't gonna never mention that loss against Illinois when Brett came in, right? You know what I'm saying? It's so I'm just going. I just watch it. I'm like, how does he do this? You know, but So you think this is a Campbell, but Campbell's got to learn how to coach through these games. This is a game he got to do if he want that program to go to the next level, right? This is one of them breakthrough games, right?
Yeah, but
And but if a win like this helps the Big 12, right? Again, it starts to build the narrative, right? And you can't lose this kind of game. You got to figure out how to win it. Iowa loses this game. The Big Ten kind of still got a narrative, and it just adds some pieces up. But if he can win this game with all the stuff that happened with the Big 12 and Texas, and I think Texas is full goal, but I'm another person with that. You know, if I'm Texas, they're gonna regret that move because
what? Steve Sarkisian?
it's gonna be great for money, but it ain't gonna be great for ego.
Oh, you talking about the SEC? Or you
Yeah,
talking about the SEC? Or you talking about Steve Sarkisian?
no, not Sarkeesian. I like Sarkeesian. I'm saying the
Oh,
SEC.
okay.
Some things are fool's gold, and maybe I could be wrong, but y'all better be ready. Y'all going into the paint over there in the SEC. Y'all better y'all better bring all them buckets. And it's something that I just in a lot of their other sports they're gonna be great. It's gonna be great for them. Um, in football, boy, it's gonna be. And what your boy say in Creed 2? What he say? When he was talking about Drago, he's like he got a whole lot of something over there. He said something like that, but you know,
Oh,
this ain't no walk in the park when you going over there. You going over there with real G's, and you better be ready. And every day there's real G's. I just don't know. Whereas Oklahoma's established enough stuff to go over there, they gonna make a run. They defensive stuff better improve. And it is because they don't get run out. They're gonna get housed by a couple of them teams. But Texas, woof, they ain't on teenage legs yet to know to step in there with them big dogs like that. So that's my thing. But
oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I think Oklahoma will be fine. I think
yeah.
they're not gonna run through the SEC like they run through the Big 12, but they'll hold up. But Texas, they're gonna take some losses for sure. But
Yeah, and the reason why I say that is because they people are not patient, right? They think they that Texas team early days of Mac Brown or earlier. You know, they think all them great legends gonna be running through that door, right? They think Ricky Williams is coming from somewhere. They think they way
they
better,
got a Ricky Williams on their team right now. I'll
huh?
tell you that. I said they got a Ricky Williams on their team right now. I'll tell you that. Bijan Robinson is the whole truth
Which
and
I
nothing but the truth.
but but
Ooh,
we don't know if I'm not. Is the quarterback the truth? Is the are the receivers the
we
truth?
don't know yet. Speaking of the receivers, they got Xavier Worthy, another guy from Michigan. He
Mm-hmm.
another Michigan transfer.
Good luck. So those things are gonna be. It's gonna be interesting to see uh, what's that. We got pro football coming in, man. And I know we got it's the big but we had Tampa Bay and uh, 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 Dallas last week. Everybody was tripping out a little bit. Dak looked good. We got the football weekend working up. We're not that far around the corner from college basketball, so I'm excited about it. I know we're not doing a boxing moment, but we got some boxing. We had my man Valdez last night. You and I talked about and the discussion. It was a great discussion last night prior to the fight with Bradley and those guys. Talking about what happened with Oscar Valdez and Fentermine and things like that, and just what it meant for the sport. And I know you are that's one of your passions is boxing. Um, and you're the one who brought the stuff to the airways over here, coming from my great man James Tony, our brother over here, who's going to be boxing here soon. Sometimes brothers got to just stay retired. We love you, brother, but stay. Sometimes we just need to be staying retired. But he's the one who called we be crooks. And but for listeners who haven't heard, about it, because this is important, because this stuff translates into football, a lot of sports, in terms of the tension between the money, safety, right, and keeping things moving. And one of the things that was said last night was the reason why this is important, because boxing is a sport where you can get hurt. And if we want to try to prevent deaths, we want to try to protect people for the long range, we have to really take this seriously, because we've seen when people have had loaded gloves and what it's done to people's career and broken them down, and find out that these folks have, done some stuff to like when you alter and cheat in a sport like boxing, it's not like you're getting 30, 40 more home runs. It's like you are taking away days from people's lives with things like that. Did you have a chance to hear some of that stuff, or just hear some of the commentary around that, or what?
Well,
In general, I know you have an opinion about it.
oh, I got an opinion about it, but you made me watch the fight yesterday. I didn't know it was yesterday, but if it was yesterday, I was protesting because Oscar Valdez, he tested positive for phentermine. Phentermine is a stimulant. It's a drug, like I said in the last show, that Victor Conte said he has given it to athletes in the past because it opens up your lungs, helps you breathe better. It helps you it helps with your stamina and stuff like that and your endurance. So like in boxing, like I always say, boxing performance enhancing drugs is not limited to steroids. So people will look at that and say it's not a steroid, so it's not that bad. But in the sport of boxing, strength doesn't necessarily equal power. So like even if he was just on steroids, it's not like he's going to turn into Tommy Hearns. You know what I'm saying? It's not that's not necessarily what's going to happen. But what is almost as dangerous is going against. What is more dangerous? Going against a guy with extreme strength, or going against a guy that doesn't get tired? In a sport like boxing,
That second point you're really is the person who doesn't get tired,
it's
because that's
dangerous. Yeah,
the
it's dangerous going against somebody that
yep.
can punch into the 10th round just like he was punching in the first round. That is an extreme advantage. You know what I'm saying? That's and they just sweep it under the rug. Like the WBC, they allowed him to keep his belt, and the commission allowed him to go ahead and fight because they said, well, WADA, they allow it. The World Anti-Doping Agency, they said they allow it out of competition, but it's illegal during competition. So what that means is on the day of the fight, so the 24-hour window around the fight, it can't be in your system, but around it, it's okay. But the WBC has VADA. VADA, the VADA Clean Boxing Program. That's what they call it for the WBC. All the champions, all the guys that are fighting for a WBC belt are enlisted into the Clean Boxing Program. So they have to be tested year-round, 365, around the clock. So how are you going to let somebody test positive and continue on with the fight? Because you know how guys are. They know they're intelligent. They know how to cycle off and stuff. They know how to flush it out of the system. They know how to work around tests and stuff like that. So so people say like, oh, why would he try to cheat for this fight? Because this fight is a guy that nobody really knows. But maybe this is just the fight where he got caught. Man, that just makes you look back, because the fight against Burchell. If you look at Valdez's fights in the past, they look more like the fight that happened yesterday than the fight that happened versus Burchell. I'll just leave it at that. Like he's usually pressing the action, trying to strike, and he usually gets hit a lot. You know what I'm saying? But the Burchell fight was completely different. You saw a completely different Valdez. He was using a lot of lateral movement. He had a lot of energy. Like the phentermine positive test. It makes a lot of sense. Like in retrospect, looking at the Burchell fight, because he was moving, he was throwing hard shots. Like if you watch Valdez, he loads up on the shots. He throws everything. He throws pretty much everything at like 100%. So he was doing that the whole night, moving around, and um, and when it happened, I said like that was an amazing performance. That was probably performance of the year for Valdez, and it just makes you look at it like makes you look at it strange. But it what even more than that, it makes you look at the WBC because you already know that Valdez is in the same camp with Canelo. They're in Eddie Reynoso's gym and they train together. And if you remember back in the day, back 2016, 2015, somewhere around there, when Canelo was still at 154, Canelo dropped the WBC belt because they tried to make him fight Triple G. They tried to make him fight Triple G back when he was at 54. And he dropped the belt. And people say, oh, he ended up fighting him. But that was later down the line. And when he dropped the WBC belt, because them tried to make him fight Triple G, he said he'll never fight for the WBC again. And then the WBC tried to make amends and stuff like that and do all that kind of stuff. And ever since that, they've been the WBC has been at the will, at the beck and call of Canelo. So like you know this has something to do with that. They really care about their relationship with Canelo, and they're not going to allow anything to get in the way of that. And so they're going to let people on the team cheat. They're going to let them, like you said, they're going to endanger the lives of other fighters for the team of Canelo Alvarez. So it
Man,
just makes you look.
the funny thing about it, like not really funny, but Canelo was up here giving him all this advice about post fight around what he should have been doing in the fighting. You couldn't tell him how to handle his his nutrition, his pills. Like you gonna give him all this post fight stuff, but y'all don't give him advice on how to stay out of this.
He
Like,
did. Oh,
huh?
that's the problem. Canelo's probably the one that showed him what to do. He showed
I
him
was
what to
trying to
do.
spin it as a positive thing,
He
but
showed
like,
him what to do.
yeah,
He didn't flush it out of the system right. So he tested. It showed up in the test, and it wasn't supposed to show up in the test. That was his mistake. And the worst part about it is the post fight interview. Um, Valdez said over and over again, "I've been through enough this week. He was acting like that
yeah,
man was touched. He acted like he was touched. Well, he got touched yesterday, and the rest. I mean, not the rest. The judges. I don't know, man. You got the one card that said 117, 110. There is no way in the world that the fight was that wide. I honestly think that. Well, I didn't see the whole fight. I tuned in during round 5, but from what I saw, it was either a close fight or Valdez lost. I don't think that it was that wide. It couldn't be that wide of a fight because they were saying that the other guy, he took his foot off the gas
yeah.
and he was doing way better in the
I
first
think
4 rounds. So he
Cassius,
was that.
Cassius, I want to believe that. Yeah, he was busy. He was showboating a little bit, but like the narrative, you and I have talked about it. Like it's almost like you got to watch boxing today
With
and
the sound
turn
on.
the volume off, right? Because the number of times I look at the card, and Andre Ward, I have a lot of respect for. So his perspective on how he got to the card, I could understand that. And I think his card might have been a little bit closer,
It was
but
way closer.
it, you're right. I mean, now the one thing I would have said is Cartier Shaw, I want to say that's how he pronounce it. I would get it right. Should have used his jab more late in the fight because he definitely had him. He had the timing on him, and it would have made it even. I think it would have been a little bit more of a clear margin of victory in some of these rounds. And I love the way Andre said, sometimes close rounds come down to combinations at the end of a round that separate people. And there's some nuance in that. And I could see some of that. But that 170, 110, I was like, this is like a Steve Farhood card that I'm always disagreeing with. Like, where are these things coming from? Like, maybe is it just because I'm watching this on TV and not in the arena? But you're right. I'm like that card. That was
That
not.
was a Harold Letterman card. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like where did we get this card from? Like it's like okay, no,
Man.
and and yeah, his post fight. I was talking to one of my colleagues who's a dean of students. He said, and he had some students who had violated a policy that they needed to do, and then they come back like you're hurting us, and like no, you're not hurting us. You created this, right? And so this idea that somebody's doing something to you, we didn't create this narrative, brother. You the one who got caught with fentanyl, and you gonna come to post fight like he's talking junk to me, blah 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 blah. Like he didn't create this. He just wanted a fair foundation and playing for doing this fight. So for him to be on this post fight interview like somebody was doing him wrong, he'd been through a lot. You created this, brother. You created this, and so or your people created this. And I think what really was about it. Now this is something that you. I think he made us succumb to this at this, in this particular fight and probably was reluctant to do it and probably knew in his instincts he could have probably found another way to fight through and get there. And when this stuff happened, I think that killed him, right? I don't know if he's been doing this long term, but it felt like he had to figure out something because he had to get ready for this fight in some ways, and maybe this is why it happened. And you could probably sense that it probably wasn't something he wanted to do, but he did it because whether it was Canelo or all these folks were like, you got to do this because you got to get to this next fight. And he was just like, okay. And then he finds himself into this, knowing that I should have never done this in the first place. And it felt like that type of energy post fight. And so we'll see what happens coming through that. But it's, we be crooks in motion again. You
Yeah,
know,
he was talking about you guys don't know the facts. Oh, well, I do know the facts. You tested positive. That's the fact. we did.
ah, we know the facts. We know the facts, man. Well, hey, man, this is just this is a warm up for us. This is a warm up for us. Trying to get out here. We just here on this block. This RSG block. You and I just want to go back and forth and do this. We're gonna do more of it. It's just we just getting warmed up with the stuff. We ain't really got no set rundown. We just trying to flow, flex and flow. We try to bring y'all into the conversations that Darnell and I may be having when I'm commuting on my way to Madison, or he's on his way to work, or he's coming back from practice. And so you'll start to get a better flavor of that. We'll jump from topic to topic. But definitely, if you have a chance, make sure you try to, hit us up again at realsportsguys.com, to check us out. We love to hear from you at all, and just we got to catch you on the other side of this stuff. And until next time, we will see you hanging out here, on this thing we call it's called the block, y'all.